Hello class, this is the way we're going to try and do the classes from now on, where you watch this video, you can watch as many times as you want, and I will narrate through the text, through this, and go through the textbook just like normal, but during class we're going to be doing homework. So we're kind of, in class, at home you'll be listening to the lesson, and in class you'll be doing homework assignments for this. Okay. So we are starting Unit 2 today, and Unit 2 is going to be 2 chapters, and I think they're the hardest chapters for the book. This is why I'm going to try and do this way so we have more time to do different problems. So we're starting in the textbook on page 218 if you'd like to follow along there. And the main thing we are going to be working with today, or yeah, just basically today, are congruent figures. Now, we all know what congruent means, and figures is just any kind of different kind of shape. Now, what we're going to be doing, the main idea for this is to be able to tell if two figures are congruent. And to do that, you would look and check their corresponding sides are congruent. So you're going to check to see if their corresponding sides are also congruent. If they are, then those two figures are congruent. So let's look at an example. I'm going to take a shape. Let's choose a weird one. This is super weird. Alright, so I have that shape here. I'm going to make it again. That shape here. I'm just going to move it over here. Alright, now to check if these two sides are congruent, let's first name them. So naming them will be pretty easy. We could just say that this is A, this is a beautiful B, and this is C. And then this one, I'm going to name as D, E, and F. So to check if these two figures are congruent, we have to check that their corresponding sides are congruent. That meaning we're going to have to check if this side is congruent to this side. This side is congruent to this. And this side would be congruent to this side. So how to write that? Also, we're going to have line AB is congruent to this line here, EF. Then DE and CB. And finally, DF and CA. Alright, so if these things are congruent, then they would be congruent. We also need to check not just the sides, but also the angles of these. So we're going to have to check if these things are congruent, and then this angle, and finally this angle, and this angle. So we also need to check for the angles as well. angles. I'm going to do a different color. Let's do that beautiful purple. So if angle A is congruent to angle F, then angle B and angle E. And finally, angle D and angle C. Oh, that was bad. Alright, so we need to check if all of these different things are congruent. If they're all congruent, then these two figures would be congruent. Now, we don't need, when we're getting into this kinds of, where we're going to be doing a lot with this is proofs, and when we're getting into them, we don't need to check if all of them are congruent. There are certain steps and ways we could shortcut this, so we're going to get into that later, but basically what we need to know is that if these are congruent and these are congruent, then the triangles are congruent. So if the angles and if the corresponding angles and corresponding sides are congruent, then the figures are congruent. Now, let's try a problem for you guys to check with. So let me go and make a new one. That's fine. Okay, cancel. Let's not save this. Alright, so I'm going to give you guys a question, and let's see if you guys can answer this. So if we have a triangle WYS congruent to, alright, let me, maybe easier if I draw part of this and then ask what the question is. Ah. Alright, so what are the corresponding sides of the following figure? I'm going to use the brush tool to draw it. So I have triangle W, Y, and S congruent to triangle MKB. Now the important thing is, when you're drawing this, you're supposed to label them the same kind of way. So when I want you guys to try and draw this, and then when you label it, you would label the W the same place as you label the M. You label the Y the same place as you label the K. You label the S the same place as you label the V. Alright, try this now. Okay, so what we're going to do is have W over here, Y over here, and S over here. And then we're going to have this triangle over here, M, K, and V. Alright, so angles are usually going to be very easy. Angle W congruent to angle M. The first one, the first one. The middle one, the middle angle. Angle Y is congruent to angle K, angle S is congruent to angle V. Alright, angles just go in order. Same thing with the different corresponding sides. You go WY, MK, WS, KV, and then you can either go VM or MV. That's up to you. So the sides would be WY and MK. YS and KV, I'm sorry, not M, W, S, and M, V. Alright, so that's basically it. That's basically it for corresponding sides. Now, when we're given these kind of things, we could figure out a lot of other stuff. So I'm going to skip ahead, and we're going to go onto page 220. So right now, we're on page 220 in the textbook, and we're going to talk what it's called the third angles theorem. What this basically says is if two angles in two different triangles are congruent, then the third angles are congruent. Two angles of one triangle is congruent, then the third angle is also congruent. So I have A, B, C, W, X, Z. If it says that if angle A is congruent to angle Z and angle C is congruent to angle W, then B is congruent to X. So basically, yeah, if we have two angles are congruent in one triangle, these two are congruent, these two are congruent, the third must also be congruent, which makes sense. If we have two angles that are the same measure, the third one must also be the same measure. We're going to go through a proof in this, but we're going to do it in class as an assignment. So this is basically what we're going to do today. So when we get to class, you guys will be working in groups doing different proofs, and we're going to go through these, and hopefully we can answer all these different kinds of questions for this. All right, thank you.